What's up, everybody? On today's show, Alabama loses one of their better defenders for a bit. The Vols get fined, and Quinn Ewers says fake news. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll get you caught up with all the latest news going on around the conference. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers who are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, let's dive right into it. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Right. Takes the handoff.
Around the conference.
And we start over at Alabama, as they will likely be missing one of their top defensive backs for an extended period. On Monday, head coach Kalen DeBoer saying veteran safety Keon Sabb suffered a, quote, lower extremity injury on Saturday against Tennessee. DeBoer saying we're still gathering information, but we do expect him to be down for a while. So that could be an extended amount of time, and we'll just continue to evaluate that. Sabb has been one of the Tide's top DBs throughout this season, transferred in from Michigan this offseason, part of that Michigan team that won a national championship and won the Rose Bowl over Alabama. Now, DeBoer said the rest of the Alabama DBs are expected to be healthy for this Saturday's matchup against Mizzou, and that includes Red Morgan, who left the Tennessee game early and did not return. So they're going to be leaning on some young guys back there in that secondary. Of course, Xavier Brown's been playing a lot. Bray Hubbard, a sophomore back there. Cam Howard, Jalon Mbakwe. Red Morgan's a freshman. But they do have, Malachi Moore's upperclassman. Damani Jackson, the transfer, is a junior. So a little bit of senior or upperclassman leadership there, but some young guys, younger players going to have to step up. Like I said, Bray Hubbard saw significant playing time in the loss to Tennessee. DeBoer said every week he has work to be ready. We had no doubt he would be come Saturday when he was called upon, and he'll go out there again this week. Our team really does believe he does a lot of things on special teams. You can see it every day in practice, so we believe in him. Meanwhile, as for Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, they have lost 2 games, and we're not even out of October yet. 2024 marks the first time with such a result since 2007. That was Nick Saban's first season with the Tide. 16 consecutive seasons with 1 or fewer losses entering November. That streak is now snapped. That was the longest streak in the AP poll era. But Kalen DeBoer, talking with the media on Monday, he said there was no room for excuses. He said the message is going to be to the team, there's never going to be excuses. That's the one thing that only softens character. It only lowers the standard, and that will never happen. Alabama, Missouri, scheduled to kick off 2:45 Central on Saturday in Tuscaloosa on ABC. Now, Nick Saban asking Alabama fans to remain supportive of the program. He spoke to an event on Monday. Nick Saban saying, I'm a fan now, so I think the message I would give to everybody is the most important thing all of us can do as fans for Alabama is be supportive. Support the program, support the players and the coaches. That will enhance us to be able to have the best solution in transition. Because it's always a difficult transition when you have a fairly successful program and somebody else comes in. It's very challenging. So I've been very supportive of the players, the school, the team, the coaches, and I'm going to continue to do that. I would encourage others to do the same. Now, one guy who maybe wasn't as supportive, Alabama wide receiver Caleb Odom, was not happy after the game. Following the loss to Tennessee on Saturday night, the 5-star freshman went to social media, reposted a couple of posts that were critical of quarterback Jalen Milroe and the Tide. Both posts appear to reference a throw made by Milroe late in the first quarter. Those posts were since removed from his social media. Now, Odom just has 5 catches for 45 yards on the season. And Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Kendrick Law were the only Alabama receivers to record a catch against Tennessee. Now, Paul Finebaum was asked on Monday, joining Cole Kubelik and Greg McElroy on their show on Jocks FM at Birmingham, about the Kalen DeBoer situation. And Finebaum said, I'm bewildered by everything I've seen. And I'm certainly even more concerned about the leadership of Kalen DeBoer. We can talk technical aspects of the game. I know you guys have and will, but I don't see much on the sidelines. I see players who look disconnected. They're undisciplined. Whether this is a continuum of last year, I'll leave that to others to determine. This season is clearly on the brink. Everyone knows what the calculus is and what remains. But these next 3 weeks are going to be about whether Alabama survives the season or not, and whether fans can feel a little bit better about Kalen DeBoer. Also, recruiting matters. Whatever happens during the season that you do immediately after the season of recruiting will help fans a little bit feel a little bit better about the future. So, look, outside chance they can still get in the playoff. They're going to have to run the table at this point, but it's not impossible. Meanwhile, TV ratings, very successful. Last Saturday's SEC on ABC doubleheader was the first time in 28 years a single network aired 2 college football games that both surpassed 10 million viewers. Georgia, Texas had a 12.9 million viewers. Alabama, Tennessee, 10.7 million viewers. And I mean, they're basically crushing what CBS is doing. CBS, I believe, had Michigan, Illinois. But yeah, they're missing the SEC big time over there at CBS. All right, a few other tidbits here. Over at Tennessee, the SEC announced that the Vols will be fined for their behavior of fans following the team's home win against Alabama. After the game, Tennessee fans stormed the field to celebrate. Like 2 years ago, the goalposts were removed and carried out. Last year, the SEC revised their access to the competition area policy, so Tennessee will incur a $100,000 fine for the incident. The SEC calling that their first offense under the league's new competition area policy that was revised last year. First offense, $100,000. If they do it again, it's $250,000. They do a third time, it's $500,000. But I'm sure, look, the fine, Tennessee says, absolutely worth it. Don't care. All right, in other SEC news, how about over at Auburn? Things have been bleak over there. Hugh Freeze met with reporters on Monday to talk about their loss to Missouri. Tigers had plenty of opportunities they let slip away in that loss, and they have now lost 4 straight and 5 of their last 6. They have yet to beat a power conference program, despite 4 of their losses coming by 10 points or less. Hugh Freeze telling reporters it makes him physically ill to not be able to cross the finish line and get a win. Part of that, he believes, is players and coaches not playing and coaching to win. Instead, they're coaching not to lose. He said sometimes it really comes down to who wants it more. Auburn back in action Saturday against a Kentucky team that is also struggling. Now, Paul Finebaum on McElroy and Kublik sounded off on Hugh Freeze and Auburn. He said, I hate to qualify my answer because recruiting has been so good, but I've seen nothing from Hugh Freeze on the actual football field that makes me believe he will make it as the Auburn head football coach. I'm amazed at some of the decisions I see, some of the things that come from him, some of the things that come out of his mouth before and after the games. I know that may sound harsh, but I'm just being real. He said, I wonder if Auburn really wasn't sold a bill of goods on Hugh Freeze. If you take away those wins against Saban, what exactly has Freeze accomplished? I know his record at Liberty was good, but I really don't care. I'm looking at Ole Miss and Auburn, and he's been a failure as the Auburn head coach in my mind. I know Brian Harsin was fired at this point 2 years ago with a better record by a game or two. So Freeze and Auburn try to snap that losing streak on Saturday at Kentucky. Kickoff at 7:45 Eastern on the SEC network. Meanwhile, at Oklahoma, Brett Venables talking on Monday about the decision to part ways with his OC, Seth Luttrell. He said, look, Seth is an all-time great Sooner. He has a deep love for the school and football program, poured his heart and soul into both. Despite that, our performance as an offense this season has not lived at all up to the OU standard, and we felt a change was necessary. Oklahoma ranked at the bottom or near the bottom of the SEC in all major offensive categories this season. Luttrell was a former Sooners running back from the late 90s, early 2000s. The Venables appointing Joe John Finley, who is the co-OC, as play caller with senior analyst Kevin Downs. He will coach quarterbacks. So we'll see if the offense improves at all. Over Kentucky, Mark Stoops had his weekly radio show on Monday, and one of the callers asked why Dane Key and Barry and Brown were both out of the game on a 4th down late in the Florida game. Stoops said it It was a personnel grouping issue that should not have happened and a mistake that they have to get fixed. So on Monday, Stoops was asked about his struggles in the red zone with the Wildcats unable to execute a lot this season. He mentioned that while criticism is fair, he doesn't get involved in play calling gripes. Instead, he insists he leaves that to offensive coordinator Bush Hamdan. So go ask him, I guess is what he's saying. Over at South Carolina, Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks stifled Oklahoma on Saturday, and now they get ready for a bye week before they take on Texas A&M on November 2nd. Two players South Carolina hopes to get back by that game. Defensive tackle DeAndre Jules, who has 13 tackles and a fumble recovery through 5 games this season, and wide receiver Jared Brown, who has only been limited to 4 games this year. Beamer saying yesterday, expressing optimism Brown would be available for the game against the Aggies. Said there's still a chance Jules could play as well, but the likelihood not as great. And a shout out to Nick Imanwari and the Gamecocks after his performance over the weekend with the 2 interceptions and a pick 6, garnering some attention as the Reese's Senior Bowl co-defensive player of the week honor. So shout out to him. And there you have it. That is the latest going on around the conference. We got more tidbits coming up next, including Quinn Ewers making the news last night on social media. We'll tell you why coming up here in just a second. Well, first, I want to remind you guys, today's episode presented by our friends over at Roy, and it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we have pulled over $20,000 to support players on the Roy app. Micro deposits lead to massive change, and with the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. And unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates following the season. The best part is risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. And this week, we are supporting Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson. We pitched in $100. Love for you to join us. Even $10 could make a difference. So show Dylan Sampson the love and keep him connected to your school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for future success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. You could win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download the Roy app, ROY, create an account, and enter our referral code LOCKEDON, and you are entered. If you're already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscription and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more information. Roy, support the players and change the game. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to every dayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day here for you 5 days a week, talking all things SEC. And we got to dive back into it as Quinn Ewers making some headlines yesterday. And it wasn't even something he did, but this was a report that came out somewhere in the evening of Monday. A post was made that 24/7 Sports had made an Instagram post about Quinn Ewers sitting out the rest of the 2024 season to prepare for the NFL draft, and then deleted it. On3 Sports put out, said they confirmed with sources it was absolutely not true that Quinn Ewers did practice with the Longhorns on Monday. Pete Thamel from ESPN also addressed the rumor, stating it was unfounded. He confirmed that Ewers practiced on Monday, said he was keeping his focus on the Longhorns' upcoming game against Vanderbilt. Now, according to Chip Brown, a reporter covering the Longhorns for 24/7 Sports, he said it was a product of a hacked social media account. He assured fans the post was not only inaccurate, but the result of unauthorized access to their platform. The situation took another turn when Ewers himself addressed the rumors around 6 o'clock on Monday evening. The Texas quarterback posted on Instagram an Instagram story featuring an image of Donald Trump accompanied by the phrase fake news, a shot at the erroneous report that had briefly dominated the news. And look, I just tell you guys, use common sense here. Think about this logically. If Quinn Ewers was benched, right, by Sark in that game, and he brings in Arch Manning. And let's say Arch plays the rest of the game and plays really well and, maybe leads them to a win or, comes back against Georgia. Maybe they still lose the game, but Arch Manning plays well. And then, Sark is kind of like, oh, it's still kind of up in the air. We don't know if we're going to go back to Quinn Ewers. Like a maybe there's like a 5% chance that this could be real. But he's on a Texas team that just took their first loss of the season. They're still very much in the hunt for the SEC title. They're still very much in the hunt for the college football playoff. Like sometimes we got to use our brains. In what world would it make sense? Quinn Ewers, who, go look at some of the mock drafts. He's not projected as a top 5 pick right now. Like that's something a top 5, top 10 pick would do. Go, you know what? I don't want to risk injury. I'm going to sit out. But even that happens very rarely. Those are few and far between. The UNLV kid was an NIL deal, right? Like he decided to quit on the team mid-season because he wanted, the money that was promised to him through NIL. I get that one, but come on, people. Let's use our brains. Do you really think Quinn Ewers was going to quit the team mid-season to focus on the NFL draft? Come on. Stupid. Anyway, that's it. Quinn Ewers, Texas starting quarterback. And Steve Sarkisian met with the media on Monday, and it reaffirmed his belief in his quarterback, Quinn Ewers. He said, quote, "We have complete confidence and belief in Quinn. And again, we were very clear on why we made the move to Arch at the end of the second quarter, try to give the offense a little bit of a spark." He said the decision to pull Ewers at the time, but they went back to him. He did say after the game on Saturday night, he said, "Quinn is our starting quarterback. Appreciate the fact that we're fortunate enough to have a backup like Arch that could come into the game and try to give us a spark in some sense. But at the end of the day, Quinn is our starter." So there you have it on that. Some other Texas-related news. Joel Klatt, he was on the call for the Indiana-Nebraska game on Saturday, but he was watching the Georgia-Texas game. And, of course, one of the biggest talking points came on the overturned pass interference call that allowed Texas to kind of get back into the ball game. And Klatt compared the decision to overturn the call to when you see a kid crying in the store to get candy. He said, look, they changed the call. I've never in my life seen something like this. Never. They changed the call. They rewarded the child throwing a fit in the candy aisle at your local grocery store to get his mom to buy him a Snickers. When you see that kid in the grocery store, aren't you like, I can't believe that parent just allowed that kid to throw a fit and get his way? Klatt agreed there should not have been a pass interference call in the first place. He said, was it the correct call? Yes. Would I've loved for them to get the correct call? Yes. But the precedent that this set, what those officials did in the game on Saturday in Austin, Texas, set officiating back decades. I can't believe they reversed the call. You cannot do that. It is not a reviewable call. What are they doing? I couldn't believe it, and I hope it doesn't continue. In order for it to not continue, they have to make new rules. So that's the gist here. Like, we can agree it was a terrible pass interference call, but also you can't just decide retroactively to overturn the call. Once you make that call on the field, it's not a reviewable call. Call pass interference. That's it. It's done. There's no reviewing. There's no picking it up. If y'all want to talk before you initially make the call, then yes, you have that chance. But once you make the decision, you don't get to just pick it up. More aftermath of the Texas mess. Matthew McConaughey sending out a message to Texas students about throwing trash on the field. He said it's not all right. Longhorn Nation, and specifically our DKR student section, he wrote in a statement, McConaughey, coming at you here. First off, you were electric Saturday night when we hosted Georgia. Bravo. Let's continue to bring it. Even though our Horns didn't get the W, you created a great home field advantage. But let's be real about the bottle bombing the field glitch we had. Not cool. Bogey move. The call was BS, but we're better than that. Longhorn Nation knows how to show up, show out like no other, but still keep our class. So going forward, let's clean that kind of BS up and leave that behind us for good. We have to shake hands on that. Next up, November 9th, when the Gators come to town, let's make sure they feel the heat, can't hear the play calls, and burn their timeouts. But remember, nothing hits our field except that Texas fight. Till then, root hard and hook 'em. Texas AD Chris Del Conte also released a statement Sunday condemning the fans' actions of throwing all the water bottles and beer cans on the field. Greg Sankey announced the conference had fined the Longhorns $250,000 for the incident. So Longhorns will go on the road this week, play at Vandy, and as McConaughey said, they'll be back at home in a couple of weeks to play the Florida Gators. A couple other tidbits here. Over at LSU, they are seeing a much improved defense under defense coordinator Blake Baker, and his unit is turning the corner, it would seem. Some national rankings of defensive stats for LSU's defense. Team sacks, they are 7th. Red zone defense, they rank 18th. Scoring defense, they are 35th. Total defense, 67th, but that number is getting better. Brian Kelly asked about it on Monday. He said the players have bought into Blake Baker's philosophy. Quote, he has built good relationships, and a lot of it is built on trust. Now, one of those players who's been balling out for LSU as of late is linebacker Whit Weeks. He has officially become a little bit of a household name after taking over that LSU defense. In week 7, the win over Ole Miss, he had 18 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And then this past week in the win over Arkansas, he had 9 tackles, a tackle for a loss, a sack, 2 passes broken up, and an interception. And LSU players are saying he's become a fan favorite and a locker room favorite. Jordan Gilbert saying he is like a chicken with his head cut off when he's out there on the field. So LSU's going to need him to play like that again in College Station this weekend to help out that defense. Over at Arkansas, their running back room was perceived as pretty deep in the offseason, and now they are dealing with some health concerns. Their star ball carrier, Jaquindon Jackson, he's received the majority of the Arkansas carries this season. Sam Pittman saying Monday that the senior is probably very questionable for the Mississippi State game this weekend. Re-aggravated an ankle injury against LSU over the weekend. So they've got a trio of Braylon Russell, Rashad Dubinion, and Rodney Hill. Now, Rashad Dubinion had a fumble last week. Sam Pittman saying on Monday, quote, to me, give the ball to Braylon Russell and let him go to work and see if he can't run it several times because he's a big man, hard to bring down, and a good player. Going to turn around and let the horse eat a little bit. So should be interesting to see Braylon Russell, the freshman, getting some more touches perhaps this weekend. Meanwhile, over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin and company, they are still hoping to keep their playoff hopes alive. And Rebels coming off their bye week, they're 5-2 overall, 1-2 in the SEC. But Paul Finebaum saying on Monday that he's intrigued by the Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss situation. He said Ole Miss is sitting right there, and the Georgia game on November 9th has taken on a different complexity now because it was no longer probably going to be do or die for Georgia. It's not going to change the game, but it changes the urgency for the Dogs. As soon as I say that, Georgia has Tennessee the next week, so all that is somewhat moot depending on the outcome. But Ole Miss has no margin for error. He said Ole Miss is probably the most intriguing team left. I'm fascinated by the SEC this year because we've never seen this before. We had so many SEC championships that were predetermined by mid-October. Right now, it is a jumbled mess. That's a good thing, Paul, in my opinion. All right, lastly, over at Florida, Billy Napier, they're doing a better job on the field, winning some games as of late, but on the recruiting trail, they lost a 4-star defensive lineman, Joseph Bachu, announced on social media. He's opening up his recruitment. He was ranked as the number 41 D-line prospect, number 53 prospect from the state of Georgia. So unfortunate there for Billy Napier. All right, when we return, we'll get to your SEC Players of the Week for Week 8 in the conference. That's coming your way here in just a second. Well, first, I want to remind you guys, today's episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And look, if you're a college fan, NFL fan, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. And tons of great action happening this weekend. Here's a couple of lines for you. Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Ole Miss currently -21 over at FanDuel. Arkansas, they're -7 on the road at Mississippi State. And Mizzou at Bama. Bama is a 13.5-point home favorite over Mizzou. If you like any of those lines, you can take advantage of them over at FanDuel.com. Download the app, get signed up today. It's FanDuel.com, and take advantage of that $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. And we got to get to our SEC Players of the Week before we get out of here. The conference announcing yesterday their Week 8 Players of the Week. Offensive Player of the Week in the conference, Dylan Sampson, the Tennessee running back who had a big day against Alabama. Defensive Player of the Week, co-defensive players of the week, it was Jalon Walker over at Georgia, who had the monster night with all those sacks. And then Nick Ebenwari over at South Carolina with the 2 interceptions, including the pick 6. Special teams, it was LSU's kicker, Damian Ramos, who made all those field goals. O-lineman of the week, Emory Jones at LSU and Cooper Mays at Tennessee. D-lineman of the week, Michael Williams from Georgia and Taka Hemingway from South Carolina. And your freshman of the week, who else other than Jaden Baugh from Florida with his 5 rushing touchdowns. That was something to behold, but congrats to all those guys. Well earned, great showings from all those guys this weekend. And congrats, your Week 8 SEC football players of the week. Also, so kickoff times, the SEC announcing start times and TV designations for Week 10. So this is not this weekend, but this will be next week where a couple teams get their buys. I believe LSU and Alabama are on their bye that week. But early in the slate, you'll get Ole Miss at Arkansas. That'll be, they're going back and forth, 11 a.m. or 11:45 a.m. But we know it's a morning game, Ole Miss at Arkansas. You also have Vanderbilt at Auburn will be early. In the afternoon spots, you'll have Maine at Oklahoma. Get ready for that one. But for OU, that's your one guaranteed win left on the schedule. Florida, Georgia, of course, in Jacksonville. That'll be fun. 3:30 Eastern on ABC. At 3:15 Central in Starkville, Mississippi State will play UMass. Don't know why they're playing that one, but that should be a dub for Jeff Lebby. And then in the evening, it'll be Texas A&M at South Carolina and Kentucky at Tennessee. So not the greatest slate next week, let's just be honest, but they're football games and they're SEC matchups. So we got that going for us. But yeah, that's an ugly slate in Week 10 of the SEC. But nonetheless, a lot of questions to be asked coming out of this weekend, though. Like, in other words, if Vandy gets a win over Texas this weekend, I know it's not likely, but that'll be a big one for them at Auburn to keep the winning going. A&M, do they get the big win over LSU? It's a tough environment going to South Carolina. We've seen some teams already this year struggle against a much improved South Carolina team. So it's not a guaranteed dub for A&M. Kentucky, I mean, yeah, they're starting to look bad again, but keep in mind they did win at Ole Miss. So maybe, if they can keep that offense of Nico Iamaleava bogged down a little bit in Knoxville, maybe Kentucky can make a game of it. Of course, Florida playing a lot better as of late. Maybe they can be in that game against Georgia. And Ole Miss, it feels like Ole Miss is going to kind of turn on the burners and try to start running off a bunch of wins. So we just saw LSU not really have any issues over in Arkansas. So we'll see what happens with Ole Miss in that one. But there you have it. I'm trying to sell you on a Week 10 next week. It's just not the greatest slate of games. But, look, we got some good games happening in the conference this weekend. And I know we've been so focused on last weekend. Have you thought about this weekend yet? So this weekend, you got Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, like we said, is a 21-point favorite. You'll have Arkansas at Mississippi State early. Arkansas is about a touchdown favorite at Mississippi State. The afternoon slate, we get Missouri at Alabama. Bama's almost a 2-touchdown favorite over Mizzou. A little bit of disrespect there to Mizzou. You also have Texas at Vanderbilt. That one is very interesting. What kind of Diego Pavi do we get in that one? And then the night games. It'll be Auburn at Kentucky. A 2-5 Auburn at a 3-4 Kentucky. May the worst team win that one. And then the big one on ABC Saturday night is going to be number 8 LSU at number 14 Texas A&M. The lone 2 teams in the conference still without a loss. So somebody's going to come out of that game unscathed still in the conference. And that is saying something. When we talk about, jockeying for position to get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game, I think is a realistic world. We've got, several 10-2 teams at the end of the season that either, win a tiebreaker and go to Atlanta, or maybe on the outside looking in, not going to Atlanta to play for an SEC title game, but maybe already punching a ticket to the playoff and kind of getting to use conference championship weekend as a bye to get ready for a home playoff game that next weekend. So going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out on YouTube, or of course the audio version on iTunes, Apple iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you can find Locked On SEC. And hey, for your second listen, check out some of the other great podcasts we've got on our network. Stephen Willis does a great job with Locked On Ole Miss. Brandon Olson does a great job with Locked On Gators. Check those out wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.